Hey there, sinners. It's Adam Knox, and welcome to another episode of The Cult of You, in a newly titled segment that I like to refer to as Interview with the Devil. Now, you're familiar with some of these contexts where I interview different thought leaders on controversial or occult ideals, but I've decided to shift things a little bit around just to kind of formalize the structure, as you can see by the nice fancy new intro. Now, why I'm doing this specifically is because I need to be frank with you. For a long time, especially in the early stages of the show, most of what I've shared has been very much framed from the left-hand path perspective. And don't get me wrong, I am a complete and dedicated supporter of the left-hand path. I have to be honest and say that my own specific work is far more expanded. In fact, I like to refer to my work as that of the middle way, or more accurately, the way of the heart, because I'm always trying to seek the balance between the light and the darkness, between maturing both of these dimensions more congruently than falling victim to yet another duality, another form of isolation inside of the brain that labels or categorizes one as better than the other, being pretty much the lead cause or the root of suffering, as the Buddha would describe it. As such, I'd like to come clean and refer to myself from here on in as a practitioner of the middle way and one who walks this path. And on these pieces, on these segments, I will be interviewing people from both sides, left and right hand path. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not referring to deeply religious, practitioners of the traditional faiths. That's not the focus of the show. Our focus is on the controversial. Our focus is on the taboo, that which forms outside or beyond the conventional level of thinking, but also considering how current science and current realizations adapt into that. And I could think of no better way to jumpstart this new season with this new expression than to touch base with a really dear friend of mine and great dankini or tantrica teacher, Mrs. Valentina. Valentina is well known for some in South Africa, as she was one of the creative minds behind the performances and the arts of the Madame Zingara famed expression or experience. She's a choreographer, a dancer, a tantrica, a yogini, and a healer and teacher. I caught up with Valentina at her home in Bali over a quick Zoom chat recently, and I wanted to bring that conversation to you. If you yourself, you're curious about the path of sacred sexuality, the path of Tantra, and what that actually means, what is the real secret behind these infinitely body emerging orgasms, what is the concepts of their view on demons and their nature of it, because the paradigm is very different from the Western method of thinking of light versus darkness, where this is a perspective of an integrated whole and very much something that is resonant with the way of the heart. I hope you will enjoy today's session, and do please check the time codes at the bottom of this video for where certain segments are if you want to jump through it, but I recommend you just sit back, relax, and enjoy the entire conversation as these paradigms bold one upon the other, and Valentina opens up this very true energy that she possesses as a dankini, a woman who has liberated herself from the conditions of limitations and unlocked a level of ecstasy and joy in her spirit and in her body that most people long for, especially those still trapped in our society today. We explore a little bit about that and look at that path, as well as some of the obvious errors and mistakes when we rush into it, and some of the things that you might be avoiding through over-technical application that'll be resolved inside of this journey or this experience. I also made sure that I left a bunch of links inside of the description to Valentina and her work, and her Tantra school specifically as well. Do check those out if you enjoy this, but either way, I want you to sit back, relax, and remember to live deliciously.
Darling, it's absolutely exciting to see you again. It's so good to have your energy on the show.
Yeah, it's really nice to connect. I mean, it's been a long time since we met in person. And I'm really glad to be here with you and Kali on your side.
Yes, yes. She's an important
Yeah,
timekeeper and guide for me in my life.
yeah. She's also happy to see me. I can see she's blowing me kisses,
I,
dangling her tongue at me.
I think it's a bit of a jealousy of because you're in such a beautiful homeland there. Where are you? Where are you right now?
I am in Ubud, in the island of Bali right now. And I've been spending winter, our South African winter here. So I've just been here a couple of months. And this is actually, I'm really enjoying finding Kali in many places here that looks like a demon.
Oh
And, in
yes.
Bali, there is a lot of demons and with big tongue, but Kali has a pointed tongue, and here her tongue just unroll and unfold, and it goes down to the feet, and is in
That's
wave like
that's
very
interesting.
Asiatic.
Is that symbolic that it has the longer tongue that side? Is that
I think
role?
it's just the way the aesthetic is, all the demons have big tongue rolling, and it's just an aesthetic motif. They've got a lot of undulating wave, whether the Indian iconography is more sharp.
Oh, that's
And
interesting. Yeah.
so it's more associated to the demon than to the gods,
I find that's an
and so
interesting concept.
fang.
So especially in a lot of the magical cultures, Kali is seen with many aspects because obviously she governs time and space and death and transmutation. And that doorway where a lot of people see her as the demonic, I think is very powerful because it also opens up the more shadow aspects of our nature
Yes.
that we need to deal with. This is something that you're quite the artist with. And I just kind of like want to compliment you on that. You've done some very interesting and powerful work as a tantrica, as a teacher, as a healer, very powerfully around the areas of the heart, around the areas of sexuality, and also about that kind of shadow work. I wanna kind of like open up directly with a rich couple of questions because there's such good energy with you. One of the big questions I oftentimes get, a lot of people want to get into magic because they want to learn about sexuality, and they want to get into tantra because they want to learn about sexuality, but they forget the bigger thing that they're going to have to overcome, the bigger challenge that stands in the way of that, what they're really going to discover. Can you talk us a little bit through that? When people begin this journey of the sacred heart, what is that roadmap really going to be?
Yeah, it's I get the giggle because when you say what they're gonna really have to face is themselves. We have this idea that we can go to a teacher and learn technique for magic and heightened state of ecstasy, and we think it's gonna come from the outside. And the hardest things, probably the things we want to avoid, is the work with self. That's why we think we can go to a teacher and it's gonna come like this, and I can avoid me.
Quick
And
fix.
instead, the work with, no, it's not even a fix. I think a lot of many people wants to avoid altogether self. you know
Ah,
they, they never really know how, they never been educated into the journey with self, and so they don't think they matter. They think that technique matter, and the teaching and the magic formula, they matter, and it's all acquired knowledge.
oh,
And
that's
what
beautiful.
they then face with is that they matter, that from the tantric perspective, there is only you. Reality is all a one point personal perspective, so you need to understand the lens from which you're looking into
Mhm.
life, and that lens is called you. So you cannot bypass the self by all means. That's the only way into the mystery of reality.
It's so
And
powerful
so,
that what you say there, because again, I think a lot of people get caught up in the mind of it. They want to get the
yeah.
mental technique, the method, and what you're bringing forward, it's more about kind of sitting with the heart, sitting inside of the presence of ourselves. How how does one do that? How does one really begin to open up to that process?
With a lot of courage and a lot of commitment, I would say, because it is the hard way. Sometimes will be easier to get a book with the magic formula, and if you just do the formula, you get what you want. And having to deal with yourself it's the shadow. It's, you mentioned, for me, and I wanted to tie it up also with what we spoke about Kali and the realm of the demons. So in Bali, I've learned this, um, the way they express this relationship with humanity and the gods and the demon. It's so beautiful for me. I want to share it with you because I feel
Yes.
it's really part of what we talk about, and it's so simple. So here, everything it's in number three, in a number of three and level of three, and the underworld, the lower level is the level of the demons, is the shadow, is the area of chaos, and then the gods are at the top, and is divinity and it's divine order,
Mm.
and they is the sky people, and in between is humanity. And the job of humanity for the, you know Balinese, which is Hinduism, which is also very tantric, is not to overcome the chaos and the darkness and to merge with the light, which is a lot of the work that we are influenced from Western spirituality, to overcome devil,
Mm.
the evil, to overcome the demon, to overcome the dark part of me and merge into the light. A lot of New Age are the warrior of the light, the light worker,
Yes.
and that's a polarity. And the
Exactly.
light only exists in virtue of the darkness. And this is really important to understand. If we didn't have the dark, there isn't such a thing to call light the light.
True.
So,
This
and humanity
resonant.
for the Balinese is the part in between that is here to hold the balance. We are not here to fix anything. We are not here to allow, like, if there is a battle between good and evil, to stand for the good one. No, we are here to harmonize the good and evil. It means also that if there is too much light, it will blind everybody, and we have to harmonize. Maybe bring a little bit of the demonic side, or the chaos, or the confusion, to also balance the light. And this I really love, because then make our attraction, our humanity, the dark is just our density. It gives it so much value, that a lot of our human work actually dwell in the density of reality. There, you need a little bit of light to balance a lot of darkness. So, there is more presence of the density, like the Kali, the dark, the activity of humanity. We need more of that to balance a little bit of light. And in our Western, I grew up Catholic, was all the opposite. Everything had to be in the light.
Yes.
And
Yes.
all our
The dark is
human
bad.
dimension, yeah, was demonized. And
Yes.
therefore the heart is demonized, the passion of the heart,
Oh,
you
that
know.
is that is so good because again, the heart is the hosting ground, and I think there's that problem of Western thinking. In Western mind, it's good versus evil, as you so appropriately say. But this keeps us
Yeah.
insecure. It keeps us in the mind because we're always being polarized. Everything is evil and bad, and I'm always looking for the devil underneath the rug. And
Yes.
there's that old phrase about a man has two wolves in his heart, and the one that wins is the one you feed. And I always found a problem with that phrase, because why the reason the one wolf becomes bad is because you stop feeding it. If you
Yes,
instead if
it's
you instead
starving for
loved
your attention.
yes, exactly.
And also, when you just said there is always a devil, what did you say? You find a devil
You find the
under
devil
the
under the bed when you look for it. Yeah. The
but you
de-
say something just now that inspired me. Don't, well, what I wanted to answer in that moment, that yes, of course, the devil is under the carpet. It
Mm.
has to be there. It's not that you have to be afraid of it or look for it or make sure there isn't a devil under the carpet. No, it's there. And so the polarity is that I am good and I am bad.
Mm,
Yes, both of it.
mm,
Different time, in
mm.
different situation. But the bad is essential in order to understand good. You
It
know,
has.
we have to have one in order to glorify the other. So also righteousness exists, this sense of doing good exists when I also have an experience of what it feels like to be out of integrity, which we could say to do bad, sometimes to be
Ah,
driven by my unconscious action, maybe just my raw passion, and maybe I did something that was disrespectful, and then I become conscious of it. That experience can become the ground, the fertile soil for then the richness that can come when I work in integrity, when I hold back a little bit of my maybe irrational reaction,
mm.
and I take a deep breath and I choose different. And I've got the quality of working with integrity. But I can only know this if I had the experience of being out of integrity.
Mm. I have to embrace all in order
We
to know
have
the
to, yes, always. And that creates the texture of the human heart,
whole. Mm.
you know?
But I think this is something that I kind of want to dive in a little bit more, because I don't think a lot of people out there, when they're new to this, really understand the depth of what we're saying. Because some people think, oh, they're supposed to just now be bad. And we're not saying be bad, we're saying embrace the bad and find the beauty inside of it. Find the sacred
Yeah,
inside of the
it's like,
shadow and the sacred in the light.
yes, well, find the profane, the sacred in the profane, and the profane in the sacred.
Yes.
So again, let's be careful here not to say that I have to transform my darkness into the light, because then we're doing the same polarized conversation.
Oh,
The
yeah.
darkness is dark, fear is fear. I can't expect that my fear will become attractive or lovable, because then it's not fear, you know. But when fear comes, I can enter the sensation of fear and go in the depth of it and realize that as much as the passionate love has the quality to quiver my body in an experience of absolute aliveness. Because when we are really afraid, we are also really here. If now I'm afraid of someone walking in the darkness towards me, there is no way I'm going to pay attention to all the other events in my life. I'm going to forget the past and the future, and I'm going to be really focused in this
Mm.
exact moment that is happening with me. So this is ultimate presence. That's what we're trying to achieve in yoga. And so my conversation, I'm not saying that I'm gonna call for the experience of someone approaching me in the dark, in a being mean. I'm not looking for it, but because these are experience that belongs to life, is to bring enough awareness that when I am in the darkness of disconnection, fear, anguish, jealousy, anger, I start to use this as an opportunity to understand myself. So, first, to understand my embodiment. When I'm also really angry, I've got a fire in my body. It's fire. It's the same fire of passion. It's the same fire of love. It's the passion of the Christ, you know.
Mm.
And if I don't get too attached to who am I angry with and trying to harm that person, but I can stay aware enough to just look at anger and not direct it. That
Okay.
alone has now the potential to expand my body experience. In the same way, if we want to look into the positive with love, I could be in love with you and become really obsessed by you, and what potentially could be a beautiful emotion becomes very tainted and distorted and manipulative, and it will bring me suffering, for example, if you don't love me back,
Mm.
because now I'm projecting my experience of love towards the object of my love, which would be you. So
Mm.
then I'm concerned about if you love me back, and what have you done today, why you haven't talked to me yet, and da 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 da. Instead of just focusing the experience that when I think of you, my heart explode wide open. I've got butterfly in my stomach. I want to giggle. When I think of you, nothing else matter, and my body melt and I feel soft. This is the beautiful experience of love.
So
So if you
it's
see,
about,
you can do all of this
I understand that. I just
with
want to kind of
just all
catch
experience.
on that part quickly. It sounds like you're saying also that one should learn to be able to be open, but the problem seems to be attachment. If I get too attached to the person and I start defining self from the position only of the other, or self from that position only, then I'm limiting. So to experience self and whole, I need to be able to
Yes,
accept self as the whole without trying to freeze it in one form, one shape, one experience, one being. And this is how my attachment strategies almost begin to build up. Am I kind of understanding that?
yes, yes, totally. And I also, I started when we were speaking about good and evil, and thank you for mentioning this, because although we don't want evil and fear, we get so attached to it. You say the
Hmm.
right word. We're also so attached to the devil under the bed. But if we get used, yeah, of course there is a devil under the bed. Let's move on. You can also let go of that. That
Yes.
sometimes I'm bad and sometimes I'm better. you know
Yes.
Sometimes I see life with a dark lens, but it's not all I am. And
Mm.
sometimes the dark lens also go and there is a good lens. So yeah, thank you for saying that. I notice people are also very attached to the things they don't want,
Mm.
to the things
Exactly.
they fear the most.
And that attachment, that freezing, I think is almost the cause of a lot of the suffering, and how that
Yeah,
when we freeze, how that kind of gets lodged in the body and becomes part of us.
yeah,
How do we then break out of those freezing stages? I love a statement. There was an idea that you had in one of your more recent workshops about the sacredness of the sexuality and the snake and the symbolism of the snake, and the stepping into the fear and the feeling
mm,
into the fear, feeling into it, because it's easy for us to say philosophically, okay, accept that there's the devil, accept there's the light, accept there's the darkness, and then it happens. Then the trauma happens. Maybe it's a betrayal, or maybe it's just a terrifying situation, and the body is overwhelmed with that energy, and a lot of people want to run away. They don't want to be in that. They want the technique, they
yeah,
want the method, they want the
yes, yes,
what is the advice here? What do we do there?
yeah. Yeah, I did this webinar called the erotic power of fear, which actually it's for free available on YouTube. So if anybody wants to follow it up, they can find it. And it's a technique, it's a practice, it's a meditation that we go when we give a form to fear. Now, you said this, people want the technique because they want to avoid to feel the feelings. And from the tantric perspective, there is no way out but in through everything. So if you want to stop being afraid, you really have to go deep in what makes you afraid.
Mm,
You can't just avoid it. You have to actually make love to it, meaning become it, enter the texture of it, let your body be consumed by it. And
mm,
sometimes we get confused by fear from our avoidance, because we put it down and never gonna go away. And so in my practices, I allow the fear to come up and to encompass your experience completely, so that you can feel you think you're gonna die, maybe that you're swallowed by your biggest nightmare, and you're gonna say in that moment, okay, let me die right now, it's okay, it's a good day to die, because you are dying anywhere. If you don't, you can't fully live if you're held by the leash of your fear. And so
mm,
we skimming life, we skimming the real essence of living, we living on the edges, on the surface of our potential, because we're so afraid to feel the depth of our feeling. And also it's true that when we can't feel the depth of our pain, our sorrow, and our fear, we also cannot feel the intensity of mystical love,
Mm,
ecstatic love. And
mm,
so for people that wants the technique to have full body orgasm, there is no technique. If you want full body orgasm, can you go into your darkest, deepest fear and keep breathing and be present and be prepared to die for it? Because you don't want to live any longer if you're not able to feel. So, in a sense, then you're going to be prized. The bonus that you receive is that as deep as you can go in what you dread, as higher you can go then when you are in the possibility to love deeply, to love ecstatic,
mm,
the mystical experience of the rapture of love. It
yes.
only happened because your heart was already broken by your pain,
Mm,
and so was broken open. And then the spiritual cosmic orgasm now can ravish you, can
mm,
quiver through you. But if you're contracted because you're afraid to feel, nothing can move through you. The ecstatic essence of sexual energy is very subtle, you
yes.
know. And if your nervous system is ready and open, you will feel the quiver, and often, people imagine the erotic tantric orgasm to be very loud and noisy and messy, but often way that is the first stage when we breaking through all the unfelt trauma, and that's when everything is so big and noisy with a lot of shaking, because the body is start to respond to deep feeling.
Mm,
But when you go to the true ultimate ecstatic orgasm, it's a quiver. There are very little movement because the body now, it's so transparent. It's got nothing. There's no almost no more density that it holds on to. And
mm.
so the experience become really mystical, like the saint, like the spiritual people. You just see them like this, with the
Mm,
eyes rolling
that's
back
the
and the
ecstasy.
mouth open and the heart open, and they look like they dead actually.
But it's so rich. I love because you raised this earlier in the beginning of the conversation about how we're looking for the method, we're looking for the technique because secretly we don't feel that we're enough, and we don't allow ourselves to sit in the wholeness of that. And it kind of like, the more we're kind of describing this and the more you're going into this, it feels like that is a very big role, that's a very big part. How much of you do you allow? I think how much of me, how much of my own ecstasy and my own worth do I give myself permission to experience, versus how much of these old attachments, especially people that
Yeah,
have not they've not they're still struggling to find themselves, so they project it into good or bad, or in these dualities, these opposites,
mm,
and that creates the freezing, the attachments. Then that
yeah,
stepping free, and you gave such a beautiful kind of guide to that, the opening through the fear, because I think there's a philosophy of how the fear is going to destroy you, and it's supposed to, because it's
yeah.
destroying those limited crystallized versions of yourself. But so is I don't think a lot of people have this understanding of how much potential, because it's very exciting to hear the statement of the ecstasy of the universe flowing through you and the possibility of experiencing that. But what are some real shifts? How does a person, what are the steps, or what is the change in thinking that needs to occur in someone to allow themselves to see these parts within themselves and be able to feel it? Is it a shift in psychology? Is it just what happens at the end of the road of feeling? What is the path? What is the it's a big question, because again, philosophical systems have been built around this and entire workshops to kind of guide somebody. But what is your personal idea of it? And what is your own realizations that you've had that have helped you on the way?
For me, what is required is your desire for that. That's the ultimate requirement. Like I'm just like put this in perspective according to people that wants to come and study with me because they want to get there. And I always say that to work with me will require everything of you. And I'm not joking about it. It means, I mean, archetypally, if I was a dankini, I would eat you alive. So I require your life. I ask for your life, like this beautiful Kali next to you. It's pretty intimidating. So if I want to become a devotee of the mystery of life, sure, I have to offer my fear. I have to swallow. I have to see them because she looks like my fear.
Mm,
When I don't have any more fear, she looks so compassionate and beautiful. In order to see her beautiful, I have to go through all the part in me that prevents me to see the beauty because I'm so afraid, and I'm tying everything together,
mm,
of being myself. Ultimately, what you just said, this inability to accept myself so fully, uh, because then when I do, reality can only look but beautiful. Reality still looks scary and fearsome as much as I'm still afraid and scared of myself. I'm
that's
just gonna leave this as a little parenthesis. I know it's very rich.
it's
And
so
just also
delicious.
dropping, yeah, I'm just dropping some seed here and there because also you must understand, and I'm maybe speaking for the people that are new to me and to what I do, that I'm also teaching from a specific lineage of Tantra that is the yogini lineage. And so the way we bring forth these aspects of truth is through love and seduction. And so
Mm,
the erotic experience of life, which also has the biggest component, are the fear. We start with the fear because it's the denser part to then find the ecstatic, and also because the fear, we all have it.
yeah.
Ask a person, but the ecstatic, we not all have it.
Mm,
This is exactly the question you're asking me. When people wants to go to the ecstatic, what shift needs to happen? Because so when we work with eroticism and fear, I know that this is a common ground. Everybody has this. So everybody is qualified to begin the journey. This is the
You
basic
use
requirement.
yes.
We all have sex,
Mm,
some of us more than other, some of us more in the closet than other, but is a desire, is an experience that everybody has had. And so I can bring some component of this experience with any of my students, and they can say, yes, I know that, yes, I can relate to that. But the ecstatic mystical encounter with God, it's rare. So we can't start from there. I can't use that as a starting point.
mm,
And so now I'm seeing if I'm trying to answer your question, if I understood the question properly also. So what does it take for someone what is the change they need to take place for someone to be able to then experience the ecstatic or the heightened experience of reality? The requirement is that they own desire for it, that they really want it. So at the beginning is a curiosity. And so I'm curious. I heard about cosmic ecstatic orgasm, and maybe I'll try to have some of that. And then a student come to me, and then they notice that they have to begin with their fear to get to know themselves. And there is the first threshold. If they really desire the ecstatic, they'll go through their fear. If they don't really desire the ecstatic, there was just a vague curiosity, but they desire their comfort more
mm.
than the ultimate state of consciousness, then they won't carry on with me
That's
or with
nice.
other teacher.
That's
So
nice.
it's not a requirement of a qualification, or some people come have studied very much, and they have a very expanded knowledge and an understanding of the yoga philosophy, but they're not prepared to risk their comfort zone in love. They want to love until it's okay. And then when love starts to rip them apart and shred them, and they don't know who they are anymore, that's too much, because they feel what they know themselves to be, it's dying. And now we enter in the uncomfortable. But of course, it's just a phase
Oh,
to then find yourself in everything that is. And
yes.
there they start stopping, so there is a natural selection. I don't dictate, but I can see that this type of student doesn't have a genuine desire to know God.
Mm.
They are more comfortable with knowing just themselves. And then they will tell me, I know I'm like this, and I know I need more time. And I understand that you could push me over the edge, but I am not ready. So is I. And so they're just happy with that. They want to stay with this I that they know. And this one still want to have a comfortable space to go home to, and to know these are my like and these are my dislike, and I'm not gonna fuck around with this. It's like, don't throw my world upside down too much.
Yes.
Or I've got a marriage, I wanted to know the ecstatic, but I don't want to quit my marriage. Then it's like, okay, then we can't work together. Sometimes I'm not, it doesn't mean you're gonna have to lose your marriage, but you have to be prepared that
Yes.
that could be the cost of the journey.
I
And
love.
just the fact that you accept that will take you somewhere. And it turns out that maybe, no, you didn't have to leave your marriage at all, but that you had an agreement that that could have been a possibility. And so lose your marriage, lose your reputation, lose your sense of identity. Because if you want to know God's, this one, it's in the way.
That's so perfect. That's so perfect. I just released a podcast recently that I call Integral Sacrifice, and I was
Mm.
helping to illustrate the ideas of what the original idea in sacrifice in ritual magic actually meant, what these symbolic stages were that we progressed through in history, the animal nature, the sacrifice of others, but ultimately the sacrifices of self. And that's it. We need
Yeah.
to be able to sacrifice our old story and our old attachment. And if you are true on this path, if you do not do it consciously, the universe will do it for you at some point. So ultimately, you are in the relationship with the great teacher. It is
Yeah.
within you.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper past that surface, if you don't mind, with the little bit of time that I
Yeah.
still have left with you. Because I think it's only when somebody gets through that gateway. And to me, this is the gateway of initiation. This is the true place where we transition from the world that we were familiar with
Mm.
and we defined ourselves in into the mystery of the gods, the mystery of spirit, the mystery of the true energy that is behind our sexuality, that is
Yeah.
behind the yin and the yang, the masculine and feminine, the duality.
Yeah.
And we dive deep into that singular ecstasy, which some could refer to as that awakening of the kundalini, that journey serpent starting to make its way. But when somebody begins that journey, there may be actual physical effects. There may be changes in consciousness, there may be changes in energy, in experience. Can you talk about that? Can you give somebody a little bit of advice of when they begin to have these experiences that are so outside of the reality that they know? How do they stop themselves from running back to the reality that they used to be in and allow themselves to finish that journey to the next stage?
Well, again, like my lineage is the lineage of the heart, and is the lineage of love, that you're loving it so much that you're never gonna go back. So when you say to
Oh,
not, how they protect themselves not from coming back, but to finish the journey, well, because they're in love with it, they will keep moving forward and towards. So there is no risk, because otherwise, again, we're going back into technique, and oh, I've done it wrong, and I fucked it up, I've lost it. You can't lose it, because it's you. You're looking
oh,
for
that's good.
yourself.
Yes.
You can't lose it. You can't go wrong on the journey, because ultimately is the journey towards your own heart. That is the kundalini for me. It's marrying your own life force. So for some people will be quicker than other, and this is not dependent on the step you've done even in this lifetime. Could be dependent on the um, maturity of your soul that you already arrived with. And so you could have done it all right in this lifetime, and yet it's gonna only you're gonna only reach that ecstatic encounter maybe just a day before you die, and who cares? Well done. You still done it in one lifetime.
Yes.
That's amazing. It took you only 90 years. That's quick. So I also want to remind people this, that sometimes we think, oh my God, it's going to take me 20 years. 20 years is quick. 20 years is a quick journey. A lifetime is a quick journey. So not to speed up the process too much. The problem for me is not to go back, because when we go back, it's like taking a breather. So we say in the spiritual path, you do 3 steps forward and 2 back. There is still one forward. So you go back a little bit, but not fully. And that's okay, because this is healthy for the nervous system, actually, because it's like you don't abandon everything suddenly and become someone else. That could be quite jarring from your nervous system. So only if you
Yes.
really are an advanced soul, it's like Jesus goes in the desert for 40 days and come back enlightened. And it's one that we know of, or two,
Mm.
but generally we need to go slowly so the nervous system doesn't fry. So the opposite for me is too problematic. The people that goes in too fast, too quick, and then they're not able to sustain the new expansions of their perception of reality.
Yes.
And they can become a little bit mad, loopy.
It's
And
true.
India is really, it's very popular to have these people that have too much of a quick kundalini awakening, and they become crazy.
It's a
There
very
is many.
important idea that I think with David Data also spoke about the idea of function, flow, and glow, and where the glow could be almost, you could be activated that level, but you've not done the, in Martinism, they call it the dry path and the wet path. And the wet path
Mm,
is the systemic, almost the poison path. You take a little bit, if it overwhelms you, take a step back and you go at it again. You do it piece by piece, but you integrate it versus going too
yeah,
fast, too quick, and then breaking the old self completely with nothing to fold the new form
yeah,
into. And then that creates more problems in and of itself, which is probably
yeah,
easier for people that live out in places like certain Buddhist monasteries. If you've lived there your whole life, or you've lived in certain parts of India where there's a bit more acceptance of people like that, it may be easy.
yeah,
But if you live in the West, that's going to be difficult.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that kind of brings me to another concept in terms of, because we speak about that openness, staying open, and I really love the frame that you kind of took that back to, that it is about love. And I would interpretate that as love your mystery more than your history.
yes,
Love, yes,
beautiful.
love what's possible instead of all these versions that you think you should be, or feel, and feel into that. Keep going, keep breaking until you're
Yeah,
broken open, as Rumi would say, right? um
yeah,
but now, when that relationship starts to expand, because I believe that magically, the more we do that, the more we increase almost our sacred potency, our ability to infect or influence the world almost to a
yeah,
certain degree. And that
yeah,
impacts also our relationship with other people. How do we then relate to other people that aren't necessarily at that same level of consciousness? How do we relate to them? Do we bring our presence energy and overwhelm them with us? Is our honesty going to be too much for them, which is often the case? Are we attracting them because this is another mirror for me to heal with? How does that relationship play out?
Well, I'm still stuck with what you say that is so beautifully still singing inside of me. Love your mystery more than your history. I think you should make t-shirt and badges. It's so powerful, because then I'm tying now these two questions. I'm not too sure I'm actually answering your question. I think there are no real answer. So I'm questioning the answer. I'm answering the question and questioning the answer. So, we're rolling with this. But
Mm.
what I was saying before about coming back, you do 2 step back, but you always 1 step ahead. When you're coming back into your ordinary, so you think you break through, but then you find yourself back a little bit where you were. But if you remember this mantra, you're gonna love your mystery more than your history, that it's gonna attract you again over there. And here, your history, doesn't it's not gonna do it anymore for you so much, a little bit.
Mm.
But the moment it gets too tight and uncomfortable, you're gonna move towards the mystery more, because now this love affair is stronger. And
Yes.
so it goes with your relationship. And
Mm.
so, how do we relate to the people? For me, it's like it's not even a question. The people that can't relate with your level of truth, that will find you deeply uncomfortable, they will stop calling you and they will stop hang out with you, you know? And the one that you still have to relate to, maybe your family, that you love, although you don't have a conversation anymore, you just drop into the love of the heart. And when you are with them, you stop wanting to show them who you have become, but you just are who you are becoming,
Mm.
without having to make that the dinner conversation. So, in other words, to expand in the mystery is not something that we do to impress anybody. It's our own very personal and very intimate journey, and it's private somehow. So we don't have to necessarily talk about it with a lot of people. In other words, if I'm having this ecstatic tantric orgasm, you will notice that the people that talk a lot about them are the actual people that I haven't had them yet. You know, that they're still longing for
Yeah.
it. And so they so focused and concentrated, because if you have had it, the important thing is that you have had it. And that start to illuminate your being.
Mm.
Then you don't have to converse about it with anybody, but that experience will infuse your being. And you can still do the most ordinary, unenlightened activity as an extraordinary, enlightened being. You can
Mm.
still be in the kitchen and cook with your grandmother. And if she asks you uncomfortable question that you know your answer will create now a confrontation over the dinner table, avoid the confrontation and turn the question. Ask them about themselves. Ask
Mm.
them, what do they love? Become curious about them.
Mm.
Give them the center of attention. And then you notice that you don't have to demonstrate, or you don't have to lie if your truth is too challenging for people. This is what I do. I turn the point of attention towards them and I get them to talk about themselves. And I keep asking, intimate questions. And suddenly they are comfortable with me because they're talking about themselves. And people always love to talk about themselves.
Your
And if you
favorite.
let them talk about themselves, they're gonna love you. They're gonna like you
Mm.
because they can get to be with themselves. And
And I think this is a powerful idea because it indicates the dissolving of the ego. I don't need to prove
yes,
myself the entire time and demonstrate why I'm different, stuck in a duality again, but again concentrate on almost finding self inside of the other,
yeah,
and truly unlocking that. And that, as again, like as we do that, they naturally unlock more. Now
yeah.
there's our time is slowly coming towards an end for the session, but there's two more questions that I need to get in. The first one is, especially for younger women, because I find this a lot. If I see a lot of people coming to the practice, many that have come out of traumatic experiences from past relationships, some that have just had an unhealthy Western introduction to sexuality. Even for not only for women but for men as well, the old classic education by pornography, so to
Mm.
speak. How What is maybe a different frame that some of these girls and even some of these boys should be adopting when they look at their sexuality, and experiencing their sexuality with others?
Mm.
What is a juicy frame that can maybe help them to release a little bit of the trauma, a little bit of that energy that they're holding back from being present inside of their sexuality fully, trying to please the other lover instead of trying to find themselves? What are some thoughts and some ideas to help with that?
Sure, this is a big conversation. So I think that alone could be an hour by itself because it's really, really big. It's the biggest wound that we have in our contemporary society is the sexual wound.
Yes.
And that's why when people hear tantra, they go for sexuality. When hear about magic, I'm sure there's also the occult. It's all about erotic work because
Mm.
it's where the wound lies, and so we are attracted by the wounds. And
Well
but
said.
my piece, if I'm gonna just bring it, it's the heart. So I always say the sex begins in the heart, and so that in woman it's open to sexuality as long as her heart is open. And so it doesn't matter how wide her legs are open. If her heart is not open, she's not letting you in, no matter how deep the guy think he's in there.
Mm.
If her heart is not open, he's not going nowhere. He's still bashing against the door.
Yes.
And for the man, it's the opposite, but also related to the heart. That if he doesn't know that he's fucking with his heart, his sexuality is really shallow. He has nothing to offer. Even
Mm.
if he's got the biggest cock on the planet,
Mm.
that will feel like nothing inside the body of a woman. He will never reach her depth. It's not that size that matter, but
Yes.
is the connection to his own heart,
Yes.
because this is the movement of masculine sexuality, is the tenderness of the heart that in man is made visible. So by it's a paradox from our contemporary sexuality, where we think the woman open her legs and offer her yoni, and the man goes inside and takes something. He takes something from the body of woman. He takes
Mm.
his pleasure, he takes his power, he takes his sense of value. But from the tantric perspective, is all reverse. So the man begins in the heart and offer the vulnerability of his heart into the world. And in the tip of the penis, the gland that is so exposed, and with men that are circumcised is even more tender because the gland exposes the human heart. And if you think about it, the gland has almost the shape of a heart,
Yes, it's
it's
true.
got that. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
that's the heart. And it's tender. The skin of the gland is very delicate. It should
Mm.
be covered and uncovered slowly, because you can't go into the world with your heart wide open. You have to go slowly and choose where you want to dedicate your love, your heart. Where do you want to put your love into? And this is the symbol of sexuality for men, to be much more selective in how they want to engage sexually, with whom, for
Mm.
what intention. Where do you want to put the top of your cock that is so tender, so vulnerable, so delicate, directly connected to your human heart? If you think in this term, you wouldn't just jab it anywhere, because it's almost like a baby. It's like a newborn baby. It's very delicate. And then the body of the man become almost like it must be a wise parent that become very discerning on what it wants to engage with, because when it does, here there is this deep unfolding from my depth.
Mm.
And so, in a sense, the man offer his sexuality. So the man can be aroused by life, and this is his offering. Here is my arousal from the depth of my being. And when it's offered to a woman, she can take it to the depth that she's ready to. So, in other words, she would decide the rhythm and the depth, and if she wants it or she doesn't want it. But she doesn't have to feel intimidated. In the normal world, um, the erect lingam is quite intimidating. And I'm just speaking as I'm in my 15 now, so it was a while back that I grew up. Um, but I think things hasn't changed much to this day. But I grew up made believe that if I create an erection in a man, I'm responsible for their fulfillment. And so if I turn you on, I need to eventually finish you off. And it's a responsibility. When instead, from the tantric perspective, if you are aroused by my presence, is a gift you're offering me. And I would just say, oh, wow, thank you very much. You're responding to my beauty.
Mm.
Great.
Mm.
That's all. I
Nice.
don't have to take it any
Nice.
further. I am not responsible for your sexuality. You are. And you can do with your erection whatever you need to, but it's got nothing to do with me. I was the muse that inspired that movement of reality, and I can be honored, and I can receive your sexuality, your erection, as a gift of devotion, as an offering. When in India we do the puja of a flower, of a sense, like, and I can receive it to the opening of my heart. And maybe when my heart is open, I can decide also to receive your penetration inside my body or not.
Mm,
So, for me, this is a very different way to perceive the eroticism.
I
But,
think it's
to
beautiful.
make it in a nutshell, is the heart. To remember, the sex begin in the heart, is a movement of the heart. And so for men, it's a movement of the heart made visible. And for the woman, is the movement of the depth of the heart of humanity. How much I take consciousness inside my body into the depth of my mystery. And, in the iconography of Tantra, we have this picture where Shiva is lying on the floor with his erection. And that's what he's saying. I am nothing but this point that respond to life. Look at it. It's very clear. It's one pointed direction. This is the essence of my consciousness, which is, as we said before, the tip of his lingam, which is his human heart. This is
Mm,
where I focus my consciousness. And the Kali come and sits on him, meaning she decide when she wants it, how deep she wants it, what's the movement. She sits on it. She push the tongue out because it shows that she fulfill herself of this consciousness, and so her form now can
ah,
express in reality her heart. The redness of the heart become visible to the world, and the palm of the hand are red. You got one there with 6 hands, and now she creates reality. The love, the fear, the attraction, the rejection, everything, all the dance of life is created, but she chooses how deep she wants to be penetrated by consciousness. And so in our human in form, the dance must be reversed. Women must not be shy to know that they are sexual initiator, and men must recognize this in every lover. I say this, it doesn't matter. Many men can teach about sexuality to women, but the moment they are inside a woman, every man is a student of the mystery.
mm.
And if they remember that, then they could never penetrate without reverence, devotion, humbleness, and offering their own human heart. And it's a very vulnerable things to do, to
I think
penetrate with your heart first.
this is so gold, and I think for anybody listening, this is quite a healing message, because there's again the typical Western thinking where many people turn to sex the same way they turn to drugs, as a way to
Yes,
avoid feeling. Yet the more we do that, the more numb or the more disabled from our sexuality we actually become,
yeah,
versus that vulnerability being the doorway that opens up the infinite probabilities of ecstasy that dwells within each and every one of us. But the lessons for men and for women are quite unique, I think, in this. And I think for anybody listening, I'm going to make sure that there are links inside of the videos for you to get access to, Valentina's work, so you can kind of get in touch with her. Do you do online offerings,
I
workshops, or
do. I just want to say one more things
please?
that you just touched in about pornography. Pornography is this movement of sex that only happen in the genital. The,
Yeah.
the, the threshold to the heart is closed. So she has the legs open, but she's closed here. And the men also, they penetrating with their genital, not with their heart. Therefore, this bashing of the genital doesn't prevent the movement to, to become full inside the body. And that's create the addiction, pornography, addiction to sexuality. It will always be unfulfilling.
And it
It
becomes the
only
echo of our
touch.
society.
Yes, and we want more because we're so unfulfilled, and doesn't matter how much more you do, but until you let your heart to be penetrated, or your heart inside another human body, you will go back for more. And by paradox, when we go in so deeply, many people think that us tantric have sex all the time, and quite the contrary is true. We have sex much more seldom than normal people because often it's so deep and fulfilling that is done. We don't have to go back so often in our life, you know and then you start to make love with reality, because, and that same is with the poisons. The addiction is because they're not done fully conscious. We just take a little bit of the poison, but if we take it fully, then will be enough. One time is enough.
But
So
I'd like,
anyway,
but I love that frame because it's the frame of making the art of vulnerability and the art of the heart inside of sexuality removes the addiction to sexuality, the same way as the shaman that works with a plant doesn't become a drug addict. Somebody that's
yeah,
constantly, they are the slave of the medicine, and the medicine then becomes the poison, instead
yeah,
of using the medicine as it is supposed to be, working through every little bit as it comes in, which requires love, which requires
yeah.
absolute love, because I can't just go mentally and say, okay, I've had enough and now step back, into those pieces. You have some online, one of the questions that I was kind of in the previous part before we got into that part, we asked about, do you offer online trainings for people that are in South Africa and other places that want to work with you? I know on your site there is a couple of courses. How can somebody
Yeah.
work with you? What is the steps for them to progress with that?
For me, the best way to work with me is to be first familiar with my work. I'm not a good teacher for beginners, because you can see in this conversation, I'm already going over the edge. So
Mm.
ideally, if someone has done a good deal of work with yoga, with some curiosity around magic and esotericism, it's necessary to really be able to follow me in my philosophical mm, entanglement, if you want.
Yes.
So the ideal for me, I've got a course on my website called the Yoga of Sex that is very much everything we speak about. It's 5 video where I take people through practices, actual practices, in how to become deeply intimate with themselves, with the framework that sexuality is a portal for the spiritual and for
Mm.
the ecstatic. But before I can share it with you, I need to know it for myself. If I
Yes.
can be true to me, then I can be true to you. And oftentimes, also with the work in Tantra, and perhaps in the esotericism that you teach, I'm not too well versed there and I don't have enough experience to say this. But in the world of Tantra, many people that I haven't overcome their own trauma, they think that by going inside the body of another, the other one will help them overcome their own trauma, so they
Mm.
think this partner work with tantra becomes, please heal me, I don't know who I am, so I'm going to enter your body so your body can take care of mine. And that's why we harm each other even more, because we are actually entering each other in such a deep way without knowing how to be true to myself. And so the yoga of sex for me begin with oneself. And so this course, it's really beautiful because I recommend that you do it by yourself first. You do
Mm.
all the practice alone. Then if you have a practice, you do all the practice with your partner as well. And ideally your partner also does it by themselves. And then you do it together and you see how the work really expand. And then you contact me. It's like, if you want to go deeper, this for
Yes.
me will be the groundwork that you at least have done this. And then we can build a conversation on top of this, and you can already give me feedback on your experience, when you've done this alone, this and that happened, these were the limits that you've met. And anyway, you can also contact me and I'm going to tell you the same. Go and do this course and then come back. And
But I,
then I see people privately, I do mentorship personally, not many really, because yeah, I require a certain level of ability
Mm.
to self responsibility in this type of work. So a little bit more than the 3 step forward and the 2 back. When now you are on the way, and that there is a constant shedding, and you are devoted to truth no matter what.
Yes.
That's what matters the most. You want to understand reality, and you want to know who are you really, what is the reason for you to be a human in the body, or you are seduced by the mystery.
I think.
Otherwise, I do a lot of experience. There is a lot of content on my YouTube channel. There are online courses. I just finished one called the Kissing the Snake,
Mm.
and I do in person. My bigger piece is in December in South Africa, in person. It's called the Lovers Training. I think I've already tried to convince you a few times to come and join us in the past.
This might be the year. We'll see.
Because I want the nice people to play with, and because of course also the extent of the depth we go is dictated by who shows up,
Yes.
and there we work again devoted in devotion to true, with 3 main practice, which is the traditional tantra yoga, the tandava, and then the yoga of touch, which is a touch work technique, um, that is the ultimate meditation. I mean, through the body of another. This is also the polarity.
Mm.
It's how we can fully become intimate with ourselves.
Yes.
And so I'm really careful that there is some groundwork that we all know ourselves a little bit before
Mm.
we project onto another. But then that's the beauty of the expansiveness of the work, when we meet another with this awareness of self that is expanded. Then it's fireworks.
I
Then
really
it's
love I really love that, and I think that's kind of like brings things home in a very clean way. I also feel like I have in my work, I require many of my students to first go through the 2 year or year to 2 year training of my system,
yeah,
before they're allowed to join the temple and work with me
yes,
directly, because there has to be that framework. Otherwise, you're taking too much energy into your system, and it can
yeah,
be dangerous for that person. You have to do the groundwork. And I think that's, a lot of people, sometimes they watch my channel and they watch other channels and they think they can go read a few books and now they've got it. Unfortunately, that alone is not going to be enough. You have to do the work, you have to commit to it and bring that process.
yeah.
Valentina, this has been one of the most delicious conversations I've had in a long time. So thank you so very much for bringing your energy into the space and sharing with us some of your wisdom and some of your ideas. I've really appreciated it. The way you flowed and opened up with the connection. Before we close, or as we close for today's session, maybe I'm lucky and I get you to agree to see me again in the future, and especially with your workshop in,
Yeah,
that would be fantastic. But is there any kind of closing message from your own heart that you would like to share with the audience, for the people listening, that you feel is resonant, especially with everything that's going on the planet right now and the transformations that people are experiencing collectively and personally? What is a closing message that you'd like to share?
for me, what I would want people to always remember, the to love the art of the heart. The love, life is a love affair with your heart. Live life as a love affair with your own heart, and be artistic about it. Especially in this time of turmoils, and come back to the self, and find pleasure in the small things of art, create beauty, um, and don't worry too much about the state of the world, because that's a reflection of your inner world always. In like right this morning, I read something that really exploded my heart, from one of the OP Americans, that were saying, take us as an example, while the world, us, the Native American and the African people, as an example, because as they were exterminated by the white colonialist, they never stop making bonfire, singing and dancing around it.
Hmm.
It didn't stop the art of the heart, the artistic expression of the heart, singing, dancing, coming together, make a fire, make food, share the food. That's what life is about. Even if we all are on the brink of extermination, even more of a reason to do that, especially if you're on the brink of extermination. How do you want to spend the last of your time, of your days? Make love. Really make love with everything that is around you, and don't buy into the fear. Make love to the fear too. Make art with your fear,
It's so good.
and
I think this is something that can go deep, and I think it's something that'll open up another conversation in the future. So I just, as a closing comment, Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps during the entire time with Germany and the suffering that was going through the Jewish people's lives, spoke in his book about a man's search for meaning. It's that no matter how dark or difficult the time is, the ones that suffer are the ones that fail to find meaning. And the ones that
yes,
succeeded and processed were the ones that got in touch with that meaning. And that meaning really is spirit. It's really the meaning that we can only find in our heart and through our heart. Valentina, thank you so much for helping people listen, to open up to that meaning and that heart that is inside of us all, that one thing that we share. I am forever grateful for you. Thank you so much for being
thank
here.
you. It was wonderful to be with you. You enriched my day, and I look forward for another opportunity, and I really mean it.
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk, a bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special, my father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed to show us the way home. Hey family, it's Adam Knox here. Thanks for supporting this podcast and these ideas. I really appreciate free thinkers, like yourselves, that are willing to challenge conventional norms and think for themselves and take on new challenges and look at new ideas. And as such, I want to say that if you haven't yet, if you are looking at ways to improve your knowledge over the entire field, and you're looking at a regular feed of ideas and concepts to keep improving yourself, I'd like to invite you to sign up at the Cult of You. All my teachings and all my ideas are there for only $19 a month, and every month I bring you a completely new section of some of the most cutting ideas, and I'm constantly adding to that. So I'm constantly reviewing and adding more knowledge as I gain them. And you'll see a lot of the interviews and a lot of things that I do extend on some of the subjects that I cover inside of those areas. I do take quite a bit of effort to make sure that the filming is also quite good, and to give you not just a demonstration of rituals, but also talk you through the psychology behind them so that you're empowered to do them. And I cover every subject under the sun, from science to art to magic to all the different systems out there, from the Golden Dawn to the Western traditions to the Left Hand Path traditions. We discuss technology and technomancy. We discuss sex magic and seduction. We discuss so much more, from purely the mental aspects to how do you deal with the darkness when it comes up, as well as how do you take those things into business and into your romantic life, as well as what are the keys to make your magic work, as well as to unlock different degrees of spirituality. So if you haven't yet, please consider signing up at the Cult of You, and you'll be able to send me a mail and message there, and I'll be there to help you,
you personally through mail correspondence and chat you and guide you through the entire process. And if you make it through the first year of the entire cycle and you graduate to the second year of the program, you're able to have direct sessions with myself and some of the members of my temple. And I look forward to helping you whether you go that route or not. Please keep enjoying these podcasts. Please share them with people that you think they're going to find value in them. Like and subscribe to the show. And please send me your messages to info@thecultofyou. I would love to hear what are things that are important to you. What are ideas and concepts that this raised. Maybe this inspired you. Maybe this made sense to you. Maybe this opened up something. I'd love to hear that. Please talk to me and please share with me. Write in the comments and give me your ideas and concepts. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, if you're only watching this on the YouTube channel, please head on over to Spotify and do subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, go check us out on YouTube. But please share these ideas and these concepts, and let's have a conversation. I'd love to hear from you. That's it for me. I'm Adam Knox. This is The Cult of You, and remember, live deliciously.